So Vandana, should I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So uh, a formal welcome and formal good afternoon to everyone again. And today's topic is, as it is mentioned, that we are discussing that in legal research, is there something known as comparative method, and if so, what is that comparative method? So, can you change the slide,
Yes.
Dr. Vandana? So comparison or comparative is not something new. It is a human tendency to compare, and sometimes it is said that we should not compare each other because we all are good at our level. It is also said that it is we compare our children, that we should not do. So comparison is a human tendency, a natural human behavior, part of a natural human behavior that we compare. Can it be useful for legal research also? And if so, what is the extent, what is the limit, what is the scope of that? Because it sometimes seems very charming to compare others, but we should also know the limitations and restrictions of such a methodology. Now, uh, what is the meaning of comparative legal research? Uh, so there can be two types of, instead of just going for the definition, because you know that defining something is very difficult task. While we understand, we cannot define. So I'm skipping that part of definition. We all understand what comparison means. But then comparative means two types of comparison can be found in legal research. One is as to jurisdiction. Uh, Comparing India with other jurisdictions, foreign jurisdictions, with USA, UK, Africa, Germany, France, others. This is a very popular form of research, that the experts do it, that professionals do it, and that the courts also do it. And second is, we compare with other laws. We compare with one judgment with other judgment. We compare what one policy with other policy, and similarly one opinion with other opinion. So comparison is not limited to geography, one jurisdiction to other jurisdiction. It can be with from between one law and other law, one judgment and other judgment, one constitution bench judgment with other constitution bench judgment, and that we also do. So take for example, in jurisdiction, uh, for Indian context, federalism is one thing which is very much compared with USA and others also. And you all would recall that when we were in LLB, we used to discuss what is the nature of the Constitution of India. And then there are various opinions. Some say it is uh, quasi-federal, some say completely federal, some say no, it is itself a sui generis. And then we have defended by our way. Uh, Similarly, Article 19. There are many articles, but I am just concentrating to Article 19. Article 19 is compared with First Amendment of the USA Constitution. It was compared in the Constituent Assembly debates also. It is compared in the Supreme Court judgment. Take example, Babulal Parate judgment, 1961. It was compared in Shreya Singhal case, 2015. It was compared in 2018 when Jantar Mantar judgment came in. So, and you will find that a disapproval word is mentioned. Disapproval word indicates that the courts and the Constituent Assembly have, in a sense, disapproved that First Amendment of the Constitution. No, please don't change. Yes, thank you. First Amendment of the US Constitution is equivalent to Article 19(1)(a). Dr. Ambedkar as well as the Constitution bench, they did not agree on that. They said that yes, we have taken uh, help from First Amendment, but American First Amendment of free speech is entirely different from Article 19(1)(a). If we get time, we will revert back to that. On the other hand, if you study the jurisprudence of commercial speech, advertisement, you will find the US jurisprudence is approved in India. So while freedom of speech and expression has been disapproved, commercial speech jurisprudence in India gets approval from USA. And though there was some change in judicial approach, but current position is that it is approved. Take example from UK, Rowland versus Fletcher, again another case that we all know. So in law of tort, sometime in law of crime also, in civil law. So Rowland versus Fletcher case is there that very much helps us. And the court in India has gone beyond Rowland versus Fletcher, and we all know that in Rowland versus Fletcher, while there are exceptions in India through oleum gas leak case, the Supreme Court has held that no, we don't have any exceptions. A type of absolute liability. So with the help of comparative jurisdiction, courts have not only approved the judgment but has gone beyond. So you can find there are three types of situation. In one case, the courts have disapproved. In second case, the courts have approved as it is. And in third case, which is of course from a different jurisdiction, the courts have gone beyond that, a step ahead. Take example of law, judgments and policies. There are many examples. To begin with, one of the simplest example is IPC. Now take illustration of corruption cases. Indian Penal Code contained provision for corruption. 165, 166, 167. These provisions were there. Indeed, ABC type things were also made to deal with corruption. But then, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988 was passed afresh. Of course, there was a law. There was a law on corruption. But we passed an act afresh. And 165 and a couple of provisions under IPC was removed. So whenever Prevention of Corruption Act comes for interpretation by experts, by researchers like me and you, on by the court, we often try to see what was the position in IPC, what was the history. So this type of comparison we make, that why this provision was removed and provisions were made in Prevention of Corruption Act. There are provisions which have not been removed. For example, forgery provision. For example, dishonestly and fraudulently word under section 24 and 25. They are still there in IPC. But the same is used in Prevention of Corruption Act. So you'd recall that these type of comparison going in the history is also a historical way of research, but at the same time it is also a comparative way of research. Under interpretation we say Hayden's rule, the rule of mischief. What was the position prior to this law? Why this law was brought in? So this is one illustration that I wanted to bring to your notice. Among the recent judgment of last maybe 2-3 years, there are various judgments, but I find Nikesh Tarachand Shah judgment. This judgment is on PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, bail provisions under PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Section 45 of Prevention of Money Laundering Act bail provision was under challenge, and the provision was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. If you read Nikesh Tarachand Shah judgment, the judgment is available. You can find analysis in Annual Survey of Indian Law written by Professor S.N. Singh sir, in Socioeconomic Crime that I write. You can find that analysis of judgment. You will find the bail law has been comparatively discussed by the Supreme Court. While the challenge was under PMLA, the courts have discussed and the petitioners have argued, and the petitioners have successfully argued uh, that in NDPS similar provisions are there, in UAPA provisions are there, in POXO provisions are there regarding bail, but the court has held that other provisions does not seem to be as bad as this Nikesh Tarasan Shah PMLA case was, and therefore this was declared as unconstitutional. So comparative method of research has helped the petitioner to reach to the conclusion that PMLA law bail provision was unconstitutional while others were not unconstitutional. So that is how we do research work. So when we say comparison, that is not limited to one jurisdiction or other jurisdiction, that goes beyond. Besides jurisdiction, laws can also be compared. Next slide. Dr. Vandana ji? Yes, yes. Now this was the previous slide was the answer of what is comparative research. What is that? Second slide says why this. In next slide, we will discuss how to do it. Probably there is no some such slide. I did not get time to make it. So second is why such comparison. What is the need of this comparison? Is it because our laws are deficient? Is it a question mark on our competence? Is it some fascination that we want to compare? Is it just to address that I told you in the beginning, not natural human tendency that we want to compare ourselves? पड़ोसी के पास एक कार आ गई है, हमारे पास भी कार आनी चाहिए, उसके पास दो कार हो गई तो हमारे पास भी दो कार होनी चाहिए. Just a fascination. Or is it something more? Is it something deeper? Is it something more serious? I would say it is something more serious. It is not just fascination. It is not just normal human nature. It is comparative research. Comparative method of research is indeed an essential part of research, and there are 4 reasons for that. 4 or 5 reasons for that. You can tell him, see 5. First is compulsion of the legal system. The means means our legal system. Indian legal system is a part of common legal system, or was a part of common legal system. So common law or common legal system, group of common law, that is UK, USA also, and other places. We have inherited a huge part from the common law. Take example, criminal law. Take example, our cabinet system. So indeed the IPC 1860, Evidence Act 1872, CRPC we have amended 1973, but we have not made radical changes. Contract Act among civil law is still 1872. Police Act 1861. So what Macaulay made in 1837, it was passed in 1860, 1862 it was enacted. We are finding no serious fault in that, of course. Often we say that it is a colonial legacy to strengthen our argument, but we find the legislature are at least comfortable with that. They are not trying to touch IPC or maybe Evidence Act. So we have a compulsion of this legal system that we have inherited from common law, and therefore it is a type of compulsion. So it can be presumed that makers of the legal system, maybe IPC, maybe Evidence Act, they had studied Indian system. They have studied Indian culture. They had some idea, some deep idea of Indian ethos. and therefore they have passed various laws. So we have made changes, but we have not made radical changes. Let us see example from USA. Federal system has not been taken from UK, but because UK is a unitary country, unitary system. But we have taken this from USA. Center and state, both units, they are independent in their own sphere. So there are not one but two types of compulsion. Not only at criminal law level, not at criminal justice system level, but also at constitutional level. It is a type of compulsion to compare our system. Second reason is convenience of interpretation of facts. It helps us. It helps us. We find something ready-made because they have already interpreted facts or at least law. So certain words have been interpreted in those places. What is the, for example, free speech is interpreted in USA. USA Constitution was finally, means this amendment, after this amendment, free speech amendment, sorry, first 10 amendments took place in 1791. So we have a convenience, we have benefit that, okay, how free speech is regulated, interpreted, and decided in the USA. So it is, second is the convenience of interpretation of law and facts. Third is correct determination. We, as a researcher, want to deliberate, and not only deliberate, but want to decide on certain issues so that it can be helpful to society, so that it can be helpful to legislature, so that it can be helpful to executive, so that it can be helpful to judiciary, so that it can be helpful to common mass. Even one small entity is helped by us. That is great. That can be a distinct unit. So we have not to determine something, some dispute. We have to determine correctly. We have to see past, present, and future also. So for correct determination, it is better that we should have the idea of what is happening outside. So we should be open to that, because our focus is not to determine, but to correctly determine it. Then cosmopolitan view, which is obvious. Post 90s, when new economic policy was enforced in our country, and then the revolution, technological revolution took place in 20s. So in the new century, so we had the benefit of economic policy as well as technology, both. So cosmopolitan view became very, very important, very, very significant. And what is happening in other countries, a country cannot keep itself aloof of these all things. So, and then competence development, that we should be open to develop our competence, know our weakness, and know our strength also, and dilute our weaknesses, remove our weaknesses, and build upon our strength. That is how competence is developed. If we remain in our shells, our pigeonhole, thinking that, okay, we were great, our culture was great, and therefore we are great, still great, that can give a type of some type of satisfaction for a temporary period, but not for a longer period. 100 years ago, a great man has mentioned somewhere, I do not want my house to be walled in on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the culture of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible. This is the first part of a statement. And I think you all know who this statement is. The great man was father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. So he told that our windows are open and we should keep our windows open. And this he mentioned when there was no such thing like cosmopolitan, global view, new economic policy. See the greatness of the person. See how foresighted the person was. That he said that no, we should make our window open for other things. Of course, he wrote something in context of religion and culture, but is not that equally good for law, legal system, legal philosophy, and all P5 that I discussed with you yesterday? But way back, maybe thousands of years back, Rig Veda also says, Ano Bhadra Kratto Yantu Vishwata, that let the noble thoughts come to us from all directions. All directions. You'll just recall in Ramcharitmanas, when Ravana was going to die, what Ram told to Lakshmana, that go and take wisdom from him. So we should take wisdom coming from any side, even if he is an enemy. We should be polite, take wisdom, and serve the humanity. That is the whole purpose of legal research and any research at all. I told 100 years back because in Young India, Mahatma Gandhi wrote this in 1921. Next month, maybe 2 months, after 2 months, it will be 100 years of Young India. Next slide, Dr. Vandana. Oh, next slide. Yes, it is not very useful now.
So it's next on my screen.
Yes, next slide.
Okay, next to this one.
Next one. It is already, yes.
Okay.
Now, how our framers of the Constitution have used this comparative jurisdiction in determining the fate of India in the Constitution. And I can just give you 1-2 examples. In the Constituent Assembly, debate is full of this type of comparative position. So often, sometimes ignorant people mock, sometimes law students and sometimes law teachers also make fun of our Constitution. अरे अपना Constitution तो इधर उधर से लेकर जो है लगा दिया है, हर जगह से लेकर जो है उसको दूसरी जगह चीजों को लेकर बस बना दिया है. Such an ignorant view that only indicates how deeper your ignorance are. They have not done it. They studied it. They relied on what Rig Veda said. They relied on what Mahatma Gandhi said. And they have chosen what was best for India. They have left it open for the next generation also. So, you'd know that when the draft constitution was presented, the very first article was, India shall be a federation of states. Currently, first article is, after preamble, the first article is, India, that is Bharat, shall be union of states. So the draft article was, India shall be federation of states. And this federation word was not used once. It was used next also. So federation word was used 3-4 times in many places in the Constitution. Then there is an article, we know, Article 3 and 4, which deals with reorganization of states, where we can make new states, we can change the name, we can change the jurisdiction, we can change the area. There also it was mentioned, federation of states, and in that it was mentioned that consent of the states will be taken. You know, currently the position is view of the state is taken, which is not mandatory. In the draft article, it was consent. So when the draft article was presented, so this was the position. But when Dr. Ambedkar presented the final draft, in the final draft, it was Union of India, not Constitution of India. In the final draft, regarding Article 3 and 4, consent or consultation word, when you want to change the boundary of a state, name of a state, so consent or consultation word was required, which seemed natural. Dr. Ambedkar and his team had changed the word and made it views. So there was great dispute in the Constituent Assembly, and many members have objected greatly, and they said that what is this? Why federation word has been removed? Dr. Ambedkar, if you accept that it is a federation, we are developing a federalism, and Dr. Ambedkar, without any hesitation, told that yes, we are developing a federation. It is federalism because we have powers have been distributed between two. Distributed. There is a distribution of power or division of power between center and state. So we have a written constitution. We have amendment power, but amendment power is also not in the hands of one. You cannot amend things easily. So it is the federal constitution. So the question was, if you agree, Dr. Ambedkar, it is a federal constitution, what stops you using the word federation? Why don't you use the word federation? And this was answered in this slide which is mentioned, and where he has used comparative jurisdiction to convince people why the word is used, and he used South Africa, Canada, and America. So I'm reading for our convenience that some critics have taken objection to the description of India in Article 1 of the draft constitution as a union of states. It is said that correct phraseology should be federation of states. It is true that South Africa, which is a unitary state, is described as union, but Canada, which is a federation, is also called a union. Thus, the description of India as a union, though its constitution is federal, does no violence to usage. But what is important is that the use of the word union is deliberate. Use of the word union is deliberate. I do not know why the word union was used in the Canadian Constitution, but I can tell you why the drafting committee has used it. The drafting committee wanted to make it clear that though India was to be a federation, the federation was not the result of an agreement by the state to join in a federation, and that federation is not being the result of an agreement. No state has right to cede from it. The federation is a union because it is indestructible. You see, he has a concern for national integrity, that the country should remain integrate. The boundaries of countries should not be questioned. Dr. Ambedkar made this statement in 1950. So this is very, very significant, that no state at all, and that's why the word is deliberately used, that no state has right to cede, because it is not a result of agreement the way it is the USA was. USA 13 colonies, they made an agreement. They initially made a confederation. The confederation came in existence in probably 1777. It did not work, which was Philadelphia Confederation. It did not work. Then the constitution was made in 1777 and 1789. 1789, the constitution was ready, and 91, then we found an amendment, 10 amendment. So this is how he addressed, with the help of comparative jurisdiction, that what phraseology is used is not important for other places, but this phraseology is important for our country because of this particular reason, and the reason is simple: national integration, no compromise. Next slide, Vandana.
Yes, sir.
Now he concluded, though the country and the people may be divided into different states, for convenience of administration, the country is one integral whole. Its people are single people, living under a single imperium, derived from a single source. And what is the single source? Single source is not the government of India. Single source is the Constitution of India. It is the Constitution which is the single source. The Americans had to, now he gives reason why this is so. Americans had to wage a civil war. You recall 1865 civil war. Had to wage. It is a misprint, I think. Had to wage a civil war to establish that the states have no right to secession and that their federation was indestructible. The drafting committee thought that it was better to make it clear at the outset rather than to leave it to speculation or to dispute. So you can see Constituent Assembly Debate, 7th volume, 43. Now, when I see this 7th volume, CAD 43, it is a part of my dissertation work which was on federalism. I recall how difficult it was for me to find Constituent Assembly Debate in Banaras Hindu University. How difficult was it to find a particular provision written in somewhere, because you have to go through pages by pages and you have to read every page. These days, I told you, thank God the internet. It is possible, you just place this observation and you will find it on the internet. So to some extent, I would say that the research scholars of this generation is rather blessed that the literature review has become easier. Access to literature review has become easier for you. You should utilize this, and therefore comparative jurisdiction has become far more easier. And that can be one such reason why last 20 years the comparative method was not very easy to do. We were solely dependent on libraries or some journals, some of them which may be outdated. But these days, Harvard and Oxford journals are available free of cost almost. And constitution of all countries you can go and see. Criminal law of all countries you can go and see on internet. So comparative jurisdiction therefore is getting a dominant role in legal research. Next slide, Vandanaji. I request each of you to write your questions, your comments, because we are passing slides one by one. So I am afraid that maybe you can miss some points. So please note down certain things so that we can discuss. Now I will discuss two more points which I had previously discussed in various lectures, including Delhi University, when I think maybe 2 years back, pre-corona, I had delivered a lecture in the PhD research group on sedition. Second is on membership crime, which on which I have made a publication in Cambridge, and that I have discussed in class because that is national security. So I will come to that, but before that, I want to discuss with you commercial speech issue, because that is new. That will be new to maybe some of the participants, because I know that some participants are also from ILI. So let me do something which is new, and then I will come to other discussion. Now, when we say commercial speech jurisprudence make us know how comparative jurisdiction influences the Supreme Court. Commercial speech means the advertisement in the newspapers, now on the television channels also, now on your mobile phone, that pop-ups, they are commercial in nature. They want you to buy something, they also encourage you to sell something, but dominant purpose is that 99% of them have one purpose, one motive, that is to gain commercially, to find some financial benefit, to get some profit in monetary terms. That is the sole purpose. So therefore they are commercial in nature, but are they also a part of speech and expression? Prima facie seems yes, they are also expressing themselves, and therefore commercial speech jurisprudence has developed. There is case which was decided in 1959 by a constitution bench, and the name of the case is, many of you might know, Hamdard Dawakhana case. So what happened in Hamdard Dawakhana case? Hamdard Dawakhana used to advertise something that they have some miraculous drug for certain purposes, and they treat certain thing which even science had doubt. So such advertisement was objected, and then Hamdard Dawakhana had challenged the case in the Supreme Court and mentioned and said that no, this is a part of Article 19(1)(a). Now there are two articles that deal with commercial speech. One is Article 19(1)(a), other is 19(1)(g). 19(1)(g) uh, uh, deals with profession, occupation, trade, and business. In short, we say POTB: profession, occupation, trade, and business. So, if you are doing some trade, you are doing some business, it is a part of fundamental right, but not under Article 19(1)(a), but under 19(1)(g). So your profession, your trade, your business is a fundamental right, number one, but it is a fundamental right under 19(1)(g) expressly, and the restrictions are 19(6). And 19(6) restrictions are very wide, in the interest of general public. So it is a very wide term. Sometimes we can say it is a vague also. What is in the interest of general public? No guideline has been provided, and if no guideline has been provided, then it seems vague. But it is a part of Constitution. In the interest of general public, reasonable restrictions can be imposed on freedom of trade, profession, and business. But they argued, Hamdard Dawakhana argued, that they have right under 19(1)(a) also. And due to this advertisement, their rights under 19(1)(a) is violated. Can any of you, especially those who are dealing with Constitution, suggest me, when the fundamental right under 19(1)(g) is already available, what was the benefit of arguing under Article 19(1)(a)? This is first question to the class. The question, let me repeat it for all of you. Why Hamdard Dawakhana argued that advertisement, publishing these type of advertisement, is a part of Article 19(1)(a), and though it was admitted that it is a part of 19(1)(g), what was the benefit to Hamdard Dawakhana if they argue in this article, under this article? Yes, anyone, please. If the question is not clear, please ask me. I will again reframe the question for you.
You can also text in the chat box if you want.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
हाँ निशित बताइए.
Yes, sir. The grounds of restriction under Article 19(1)(a) is limited.
Yes, just wait. There was some noise coming therefore. Yes, बताइए क्या है निशित, क्या reason है? What is the reason?
Sir, the grounds of restriction under Article 19(1)(a) is limited.
Okay.
And the state can also regulate and also create a state monopoly in case of Article 19(1)(g).
Okay, so your first argument is that under 19(1)(a), the restrictions or reasonable restrictions are limited. Okay. Why do you say it is limited? I would say it is broad because 8 restriction है वहाँ पे, तो यहाँ पे तो एक ही restriction है.
Because the scope of restriction under Article 19(1)(g) is of a different nature. In this, the state can also create a monopoly for itself in certain sectors. But Article 19(1)(a) is very limited and it is specified.
Okay, this sounds good, but can you keep aside this monopoly issue also, because monopoly issue was not in the monopoly. This point of monopoly was not coming in dispute. Is there any other reason? I think you're very close to answer.
So then the other reason would be that when we deal with, for example, in Ministry of Broadcasting, then those things come under freedom of speech and expression.
Okay, okay, got it.
So you give advertisement to that actually will, I think that would maybe the ground for coming under freedom of speech.
Okay, okay. Any other answer? I think this is very close answer. But anyone, one can also, one person can try. One of the participant can try. I encourage girls participating to answer this. Don't want to give a try? No one? I told you that nothing to be worried for a wrong answer or answer that you think that may not be correct. Nothing to be worried. It is the last forum that I usually say. It is the last forum where you can speak something and there are chances of improvement, and yes. Okay, no problem. So I think the answer by Nishit is quite close. That Article 19(1)(a), under 19(1)(a), the restrictions are 8. There is no doubt 8 restrictions are there, but they are still restricted in comparison to the restrictions under 19(g). Why? Because the 19(g), in the interest of general public, that may be anything. So that gives quite a range of area for the government to interfere. But it is very much defined in case of 19(1)(a). Maybe this should be sovereignty, integrity, or public order, or maybe defamation, contempt of court, excitement of offense, or something like that. So the advertisement, it may be little bit misleading, and if it is agreed that the advertisement was little bit misleading, it cannot be covered under 19(2), while it can be covered under 19(6). It could be covered. So they said that no, this is our expression under 19(1)(a). So this was one such reason, but the whole purpose is not to discuss judicial process. The purpose is to discuss how this comparative jurisdiction has helped. So the Hamdard Dawakhana has declared that indeed commercial speech is not at all a part of free speech, and it said that commercial speech is a type that can get protection under legal protection or some protection, but it is not a free speech for the purpose of fundamental right. Why? Because it is not a part of essential concept of freedom of speech. And what is the essential concept? Essential concept is, does it promote a political idea? Does it promote a social idea? So does it promote an economic idea which is in the welfare of common mass? And the Hamdard Dawakhana, the Constitution Bench, said that the whole purpose of such advertisement is to earn more and more money by making people, by befooling people, by misleading, by giving a catchy advertisement. And therefore, such thing is not at all a part of free speech. Then if it is not a part of speech, how could it be a part of free speech?
under Article 19(1)(a). It is a purely trade type of thing, business type of thing, and purely trade and business type of thing will get benefit, will get protection only under 19G and not under 19(1)(a), because it is not at all a part of free speech. From where Hamdard Dawakhana got this idea? Hamdard Dawakhana got this idea from USA judgments. USA has decided on the similar line in 1942. Valentine. There was a case of Valentine. In that case, the USA Supreme Court has decided on the similar line that that these type of advertisement, they have not hidden but expressly they have a commercial purpose, and free speech is something for political purpose, something for social purpose, something for economic purpose, something for the benefit of common mass. But this free speech, if this type of advertisement is only for money and not money for all the persons, money for a group of persons, group of businessmen, so we will not allow it under free speech. Valentine case, 1942. So Hamdard Dawakhana has relied on that, and they said that no, it is not a type of speech that needs to be protected. Later on, the jurisprudence in USA changed, and in the later decisions, 1959 in USA, William B. Camarano, Cammarano, in 1959. In the same year, when the Hamdard Dawakhana judgment came in, the USA changed its approach. But because those days, I think, judgment was not made available or the jurisprudence that was changing was not known to the Supreme Court. Therefore, they did not see this judgment. They were not able to see this judgment. Later on, in Indian Express case, in 1984, a 3-judge bench said that no, Hamdard Dawakhana is not a correct judgment because it has not decided on all USA precedent. It has decided selectively on one precedent and ignored other precedent. So you see, Hamdard Dawakhana was a constitution bench judgment, but a full bench judgment in Indian Express, they said that Hamdard Dawakhana is not a good precedent. And later on, in USA again, in 70s, it was decided that no, commercial speech is a part of freedom of speech and expression. It is protected under Article 1 of the First Amendment of Article 1. First Amendment Article. So freedom of speech and expression, under freedom of speech, commercial speech is included. And later on, Indian cases also changed their jurisprudence. So in Sakal papers, or maybe in Bennett Coleman case, or maybe Tata Press Limited case, they all, you will be surprised to see, none of them are commercial bench judgment, constitution bench judgment. They are less than constitution bench judgment, but they have ignored the plea or the law laid down in the Hamdard Dawakhana case. Why? Because they said that the USA jurisprudence has now changed and we have also to change. So this is the impact of comparative jurisdiction on India, and we have determined it. And there are valid reasons for this. Why? Because commercial speech is commercial in sense, but in many sense they are not commercial. So there are various ventures. So why to cap every such venture? So Airtel does Airtel Marathon. Their purpose may be to propagate Airtel, but they are doing marathon. So if there is an advertisement, why should it be treated as a commercial speech only? And why should not it get a benefit? So NDTV is a commercial enterprise. There is no doubt. Should NDTV or maybe Aaj Tak or maybe Times of India They are commercial enterprise. Should they get free speech or not? It is already decided they should get it. So there are government advertisement also. So there are advertisements which have various purposes. So excluding all commercial speech was a wrong judgment, and then Indian jurisprudence has changed. That was the impact. So this now I will just maybe next 15 minutes I will discuss with you cases of sedition, that uh, how we should be careful about when we make comparison, when we make comparative study. Now, sedition law, we all know it is one of the most misused law, and therefore it is rightly argued that it should be repealed. There are views which say that no, it should not be repealed, it should be reformed. Even Shashi Tharoor, on whom sedition law has been used and the prosecution is investigation is going on, he also presented a private member bill, and he said that yes, I want it to be maybe reformed, not to repeal. So currently there are discussions because of various reasons, be it Vinod Dua case, be it recent bail order, be it various cases, that no, sedition law should be repealed. And the comparative law is being given one of the examples. There are various reasons, but one strong reason being given is the comparative law. And what is comparative law? And what is comparative law? That we all know. Can anyone tell me what is that comparative law which is given as an illustration to support that sedition law should be repealed? Just 1 minute. Very easy answer. I think this is far more easier. Yes, bataiye. The question is, what is the comparative jurisdiction that is being used to support the plea that law of sedition in India should be repealed?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I think it's UAPA.
Shruti, I think maybe my question is not clear. Gurudat, wait. No, wait, Gurudat, wait. Stuti, my question is that regarding sedition law, that it should be repealed. There are very strong argument coming from that using comparative jurisdiction. So what is that argument that I am asking? UAPA is okay, but we are not discussing UAPA. If you get a point, yes. Gurudat, you wait for 1 moment. If no one answers, then you answer, please. Because I know that you know the answer. Anyone? If the question ये है कि जो सेडिशन का लॉ है, जो राजद्रोह का लॉ है 124A आईपीसी में, इसको हटा देना चाहिए, इसको लेकर एक कॉम्पैरेटिव आर्गुमेंट आ रहा है कि फला जगह इस लॉ को हटा दिया गया है, इसलिए यहाँ भी हटा दिया जाए. वो कौन सी जगह है जिसके बारे में चर्चा हो रही है?
Good afternoon, sir.
हाँ, अनु को बोलने दीजिए. निश्चित वेट करिए आप. यस, अनु बताइए.
One argument in support of abolition or repealment of sedition law is that the sedition law was given to us by the Britishers, and in Britain itself the sedition law has been repealed, so it should be repealed in India as well.
Yes, good. हाँ, निश्चित, you want to add something?
No, sir. Same answer.
Okay, चलिए. कोई आप में से कोई और कुछ ऐड करना चाहता है? गुरुदत्त, you want to add something?
No, sir, the same thing.
It's the same thing. ठीक है. There are many things to add, let me tell you. For example, you can also argue that New Zealand made the same thing. So not only UK, but New Zealand also did it. Anyway. So it is correct. The answer is correct. So from Anu or maybe Nishit. So thank you for all three who have attempted, and I encourage everyone that you should participate. If the resource person permits you to participate, do participate. Everyone should participate. So in UK, sedition law has been repealed in 2009. and there is no sedition law as such. So India should also repeal it. This is the argument. And that sounds very convincing, that if the British, who has given this law, 124A was incorporated in 1870, not in 1860, but in 1870. So if they have repealed it from their jurisdiction, why India should not repeal it? India should also repeal it. So we can make, and many arguments can be made, but let us consider this comparative argument when we do research work. To begin with, when we discuss an example, some of the things that we should discuss is some very common sense example. One is, what is the geography of India and UK? It matters a lot because we are discussing, we are dealing with criminal law. So the geography matters. India is 13 times larger than UK. 13 times larger than UK. What is the population comparison of India and UK? Population of UK is less than 7 crore. It is less than Uttar Pradesh, less than Bihar, less than Madhya Pradesh, less than Rajasthan. UK population is less than Gujarat. Population is less than West Bengal. You jointly make Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, they become more than UK population. The Northeast and Jammu Kashmir population jointly is around population of UK. So the criminal law acts among public for the purpose of law and order, and sometimes for national security also. So therefore the geography as well as population matters a lot. So let us discuss this. Do not say that because a law has been removed from some place, that should be simply removed from India. This is one argument. This counter argument. So we should consider it. What is the second thing that we should keep in mind? That what is the terror threat? What is the seditious threat? What is the separatist threat in India and UK? UK has separatist threat from Irish Republican Army. That an independent Ireland, independent country. And that is probably the only threat in UK that started back in 60s or 70s and continuing maybe in 90s. What are the terror threat in India? What are the separatist threat in India? In 1960s, Tamil Nadu and the South parties, South India parties, they said we want an independent Dravid Nadu. And Anna Durai has made a speech in Rajya Sabha. That the first speech is called as maiden speech. They said that I am here to demand an independent country like Dravid Nadu in 1960s. 1980s, the Khalistan demand started. 70s onward, Northeast also. 1990s, Kashmir issue. So we find that it is Kashmir, one side Northeast, Khalistan, which is time and again which keeps on coming. Fortunately, the only demand that has gone is Dravid Nadu demand. So our threat of secession is different from UK. So this is the second argument that needs to be considered. Now let us consider what happened to Irish Republican Army. But before that, before Irish Republican Army, 1977, the Law Commission of UK recommended that the law of sedition be repealed. 1977 means around 40 years back, 2009 में repeal किया UK से, but 40 साल पहले ही Law Commission of UK has suggested that repeal it, and the UK has not repealed it. You know why? I will discuss with you why. 77 के बाद से 87, 97, 20 साल तक उन्होंने इसको रिपील नहीं किया. क्यों? I will discuss with you why they did not repeal it. And why they repealed it in 2009? There is a stronger reason. Not because suddenly they have a democratic feeling. No. But the Law Commission of India has suggested a repeal. What Law Commission of India has done in India? In 1971, 42nd Law Commission report came. They said that we have to retain sedition. They have indeed extended support. They have indeed proposed extension of sedition law, to which I don't agree. 1997, 257th report of Law Commission of India came in. They also suggested retain. They said that 42nd Law Commission, 42nd report of Law Commission of India is very good, and we have to retain it. We have not to repeal it. They also suggested not to retain but extension of sedition law. So you see that Law Commission of UK is suggesting repeal. Our Law Commission is suggesting to retain it. 2017-18, Law Commission of India has presented a paper that we will discuss whether it should be repealed or retained. They did not give any report. They did not give any recommendation, and now the time was over. Law Commission of India. So Law Commission of India suggested, but the UK government did not do it. The Parliament was not moved by Law Commission. So what was so important there? What was so important? Let me tell you. Irish Republican Army was the key reason why sedition law retained there and why it was removed. In 1974, UK passed a law that is called as Prevention of Terrorism Temporary Provisions Act 1973. When Irish Republican Army made certain attacks in 1931, they passed a law, Prevention of Violence Act 1939, temporary provision. In 1994, Irish Republican Army has declared complete cessation of all military activity. 1994. But the UK government did not move on this promise. Indeed, they have passed in 2000 Terrorism Act of UK, which was far more draconian, far more harsh. 2000, this was before 2001 attack. Please take note. It was not because of impact of 2001 attack. It was because of some previous terrorist attack on UK, where some of the Irish Republican, some link, not all serious link, but some link of Irish Republican Army was found. But Irish Republican Army continued its ceasefire, and in 2005, you know, 1994 they declared a type of ceasefire, and 2005 Irish Republican Army has announced that it is ending any armed campaign. The terror group in Irish Republican Army the secessionist group of Irish Republican Army, it has declared that it is not only following ceasefire for last 11 years, but it will end all armed campaign. Then in 2009, UK law was repealed. It was not a matter of chance, my friend. This is my understanding. You may agree, may not agree. If you don't agree, please give your argument. But my argument are that UK law has been repealed, UK sedition law has been repealed, not because they have sudden thought of some 21st century democratic values. It was only because IRA has said that we will come in democratic process, we will not have any armed rebellion. Take example of India. What do Naxalites do? They still say no elections. We don't rely on elections. They attack on elections. What do terrorists do in India? No elections. They attack on elections. They attack on people who are elected. They don't rely on democratic process. They have not declared any ceasefire except some in Nagaland. You take example of Jammu and Kashmir. You take example of Naxalism. They keep on killing people, especially police personnel. I understand that there are various reasons, maybe some dissatisfaction, sometimes poverty in places of Naxalis, but gun is not the answer for that. So when we say that UK law has repealed sedition law, and therefore India should also repeal, we should consider 2-3 things. Number one, take example of law commission, that no independent commission in recent days, independent committee in independent days have suggested that the Indian law should be repealed. Indeed, the parliamentarians do not agree. Let me tell you, there are 5 bills pending in the parliament, private member bill, and none of them suggest it should be repealed. They also suggest reform, to which everyone agrees, be it treasury bench or opposition. They agree that law needs to be reformed, but no repeal. So second is Law Commission of India, and third is the threat to Indian thing. So we should be very, very clear. And fourth is that they have repealed sedition law, but they have very, very stronger law like Terrorism Act. Sometime I suggest you please read section 57 and 58 of Terrorism Act, and you will know there are no parallel provision in India indeed, like 57 and 58. So with that, friend, I wanted to discuss with you membership crime issue, but I think 15 minutes time I am leaving it for the house to open to discuss with you your research problem in context of comparative jurisdiction. You can also pass some questions if you could not ask in the last class due to certain reason. So because the same research person is there and same audience is there, so we can take this benefit. All questions, all agreement, disagreements are welcome. So when we make comparative jurisdiction, it is very good way to compare anything. It has become little bit easier also because of internet revolution. But when we compare, try not to forget, while we should be open to take anything from any jurisdiction, but try not to forget that apples are apples and oranges are oranges. Thank you very much.
Dear scholars, over to you. If you have any questions regarding the lecture, yesterday's talk or today's talk, or regarding your research problem you're working on. And I would say that this is an excellent opportunity for you all to discuss about your research area. Because
Yes.
you're working on your hypothesis and research questions. Nothing has been finalized so far. And you have so many options in your mind regarding methodology. So do come forth and just discuss about it. Okay, if there are no questions, then I would just extend my hearty thanks to you, sir.